Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. And I am back to talk about batting. I found a few pieces here that I could use to use for examples to show you and explain to you what how I use it and when I don't use it. So, first off, batting, it's like, what is batting? Most people might know, especially if you're an experienced sower, you will know what batting is. Some people don't, and they're just learning. And especially with the Boro Inspired Projects, there's a few different people asking you, do I use batting? So, first, I'm going to show you. I only have some small pieces of what is batting that traditionally people might know, and what I actually took out of used quilts. And that's part of me taking things apart to rebuild. So if a quilt is ripped and it's really worn out, and they're giving it away at the thrift shop, or it's $1, why not buy it? Why not take it and get it and take it home and use the parts of it that you can? I have actually cut these parts. I mean, I've gotten full pieces of batting out of quilts like that. So this is batting, and batting is used inside your quilt, primarily for warmth. Now, the problem with batting for some people is that they don't secure it enough. It doesn't get sewed on the edges enough, and then it bunches up. And you'll see that, like, if you buy a quilt from, one of the conglomerates, big stores, and you put it in the washing machine, you take it out, and it's all bunched up. That's the batting inside of it. Or it could be feathers if it's a down quilt or something like that. But primarily, that's what batting is, and it's to give it some weight. It's to give it some substance, and so the blanket actually has some warmth to it. So that's batting. Now, there's many substitutes you can use for batting, and so I'm going to talk to you about that. And um and then I'm going to show you some examples of different traditional quilts that I've made, and I sometimes go back to make. But batting like this can be substituted with a sheet. And you think the sheet is thin, maybe it's too thin, and you want to put two layers of it. Your experience will teach you and show you that that might be too heavy. Or if you're trying to make a weighted blanket, maybe that's what you want. But to try it and experiment is the best. I have found that just one piece of a sheet, if I'm using a sheet as batting to go in my quilt, is plenty. That will be plenty. Um, the type of fabric you do not want to use, I believe, in my opinion, is a fat quarter type, tightly woven cotton that has moderate heaviness to it, because that will be difficult to sew on the edges. Here, it's going to give it maybe too much thickness. That has been my experience, as I did try this out with a couple of blankets I wanted heavier. So I wouldn't use that. Now, batting, according to definition, you can buy it in the store. Like I said, you get it in a bag, you buy it in a store, get it in the thrift shop. In different methods of sewing, batting will have a different definition. For example, in the Cantha method, I'm going to just hold these up and show you. This is this is just a scarf or a sari. This is a sari. You can almost see through it, right? So in Kantha, the Kantha method, they'll take one sari, they'll take a second one, and they will start to layer them. They'll put them together like that. And then they may fold them depending what they're making, depending what's being made. They may fold it, or they may take a third piece. And maybe this piece is going to be the outer layer, okay? And they use these as the inner layer. The thing of it is, in Kantha, they are layering the saris. They're layering them. So the inner layers are considered a batting, what we would consider batting. It's giving it warmth, it's giving it substance. And then they're sewing Kantha straight up and down. So it's securing those inner layers. Now, with us, when we make quilts, some people will do a stipple stitch. They'll go all through the quilt. Or like in this case, what I did here is I just sewed my blocks together. And then I did tie knots because I have a thin layer in the middle here, a sheet that I don't want to bunch up and come apart. And I actually brought it to the edges, and it's folded over with this back to front hem. So this is the back. And so, this is a traditional quilt. This is like a quilt that you can use when you're sitting on the couch or whatnot. So, and it's not too heavy. It's actually pretty good. So, that's a sheet I put in that one. Now I feel if I put this batting in this, because the back layer of this quilt, the backing is quite heavy. If I put this in, I feel like it just would be too bulky. And to tell you the truth, since I had started to learn about substitutes for batting, such as sheets and flannel sheets, cotton sheets, I would be careful with the silk, because if you're going to tie knot or you're going to sew around, they can pull over time, especially if a blanket's going to be moved around a lot. But the tightly woven cotton or flannel are really excellent for batting. I like them much better than this manufactured batting. I don't care for this. Actually, to tell you the truth, the reason I was going to have to go to my storage unit to get some batting is because the batting that I have on hand, right? As you know, or you might know, I do needle felting also. I'm a needle felter, dry felting and wet felting. But for felting, look, I created this base. This is all wool. You're going to see this is just wool. It's actually a rabbit Angora wool that I had gotten at the thrift shop long ago. So you're seeing the fibers. Those are fibers there. But I just tied together the batting, and I'm just using it for my needle felting when I make my projects. That's what I have ended up doing with the batting. That is what I'm doing. So I'm not using batting. Now, in my Boro Sashiko projects, I'm going to tell you, when I started out a long time ago, experimenting with Boro Inspired pieces. I tried the batting once with a Kawandi piece. I did not like it. It just was so difficult for me. I'm like, am I supposed to be sewing through all of these layers? And it hurt my hand, and I'm like, this should not be hurting my hand. So I decided that this is an experimental piece. Okay, this is a piece I did long ago. I put a heart here and just different designs like all through this piece. This is Boro inspired, but it has, American applique, it has machine stitching, it has tie knots, and I'm just going to show you the backing because it is not because there is no backing. Okay, this was an experiment. I left the backing off. I wanted to see. And I've had this in put away for some time, but the backing. Look, this is all tie knot, and this is the stipple stitching. I wanted to see if that was something that I should leave as part of like a blanket, as part of the blanket. And I've left it that way, and it's held up pretty good. I take it out and fold it up, put it on the couch, but the backing is back to front, and I use machine stitching going across, and so this is not your typical sashiko. I am borrowing the Boro method of laying out the design and building the design, and then I'm using a traditional American machine stitching on here. So now I'm going to tell you, if I did put batting, if I put batting in the back and then put a backing, um, it would make the hem a little thicker. If I was hand sewing it might make it a little more difficult, at least on the hem piece. Um, and and then once you have your hem piece done, then you can do your tie knots, which I believe is easier than doing stipple stitching or cross stitching, but maybe not. But it definitely would make it thicker, is what I'm saying. And depending on the fabrics that you're using. And this is kind of a thin, it's not rayon, but it is a thinner fabric. So the, let's see, I have one more to show you here. Oh, here we go. Here it is. Okay. This piece, Boro Inspired Sashiko piece, I sewed my design onto the base. So I have the layer of the designs, all sashiko visible stitching onto the base, and then I put a backing. And really, in my mind, and other people may have different opinion, but I believe when you have a top layer sewed to your base, and then you have a backing, there's 3 layers right there. In my opinion, unless you want it really to add a lot of warmth, that is a batting in the middle of all this is not necessary unless you really do want your quilt to be super thick or quilty, really thick. Then you add, and then in that case, certainly you have the option to add the traditional batting. You certainly can. Now, how do you do that? There are people who, in my research and my experience over the years, from the knowledge that I have gained, if you put, let's say, if I was to put a batting, I would first do my Boro onto my base, then lay out my batting, and then put on my backing. Now, how you adhere your batting to your quilt, to your quilting, whether you're doing it tie knotting or you're doing simple stitching. You go with your machine and you go around. Now, I will say that if you're hand stitching your batting to your base, you're gonna get it may become very thick for you to do the hand stitching. Um, if you do your base and your design first, and then add that layer, that might be the easiest way to do it. Now I have seen um, people out on YouTube sewing right into doing their sashiko stitching, sewing right through their base, through their I'm sorry, through their batting, um, and through the top layer of the batting, and or the whole batting, and then adding and using that kind of as a base. And I I tried it and I really can't do it. I can't do it comfortably. And it's a method that maybe some people do. And but I have come to really not add that thick this type of batting. And if I am going to use something as a batting, I'll use a sheet. And so that, and as it is my base under here, right? The base that I sewed these onto is a sheet. So I consider that my batting. So I hope that that helps a little. It seems a little confusing, but if you have any other questions, let me know. That's how I do it, and I get a nice flow. I mean, the blanket is light, it's warm, and it's not really stiff and bulky. But if you do want that quilty feel, you can certainly add as many layers as you want, and you may figure out a way to do that without it being strenuous on your hands. Um, so anyway, I hope that helps, and you have a beautiful day.